ESPN's Tom Luginbill is going to join us weekly. Surprise, kids, you're welcome. Like I said, y'all can have Christmas. Lugs, what's up?
Doing this morning, guys?
Doing great. Me and you talked a little bit earlier. We've talked a ton of Nebraska, but I know you have a take, and then we'll move on from the Cornhuskers. What are your thoughts on Nebraska?
You know, guys, I got to be honest with you. I think that people aren't looking at the history of how this Nebraska program got to this point. All right, you got to go way back to the days of 105 scholarships versus 85 scholarships, unlimited walk-ons to walk-on restrictions, no cable television. I've always said the worst thing that ever happened to Nebraska was the advent of cable television because it created the arms race, it expanded the bowl picture, it put everybody on television. Whereas in the old days, you had a handful of teams that played on TV, a handful of bowl games, and that was it, right? And so that's how they were able to gain this status and this exposure from a national perspective. Flash forward to now and take a look at the world we're living in recruiting, right? Everything's been accelerated. Eighth graders, freshmen, sophomores, all trying to get on campus in an unofficial capacity. They're going to games, they're going to junior days, they're going to camps. Have you looked at the talent pool, not only in the state of Nebraska, but the states that border it? Wyoming, no players. South Dakota, no players. Kansas, no players. Iowa, okay? We're not talking about Clemson or an Alabama or an Ohio State or Georgia where the coach just throws a rock outside of their office and hits a great player within 100 miles of campus. So when you got Texas A&M, Texas, LSU, Alabama, and they're getting kids on campus all the time, all right? How is Nebraska supposed to do that? And I'm sitting there watching that game the other day, and I'm looking at who their main target is on offense. He's a transfer from New Mexico State.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about Nebraska's player pool right now? What does that tell you about their roster? And no disrespect to that player, but guys, we can rip on Scott Frost all we want. They're not very good. They can't run on defense. They don't have pass rushers. Yep. They don't have any juice at the skill spots on offense. They're very average in the offensive line. We can take the whole onside kick fiasco and set that aside. The reality is they're not very good.
And they didn't lose that game because of one play. You don't lose games because of one play. I think a lot of people don't understand that. But I'll tell you another thing. Lugs, before we get off of it. Huddle being invented. Now coaches being able to watch kids from one coast to the other without having to send in DVDs and having those connections. The greatest irony of all, you know where Huddle was invented? Omaha, Nebraska. That's exactly
right. Hey, I'll add one more thing to this, guys. 2014, I think, was the class. Don't quote me on that, but we really started studying this with them. And we did an average miles away from Lincoln, Nebraska of every kid that signed in the class, and it was over 900 miles.
That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. And gas so expensive nowadays, too. I mean, hell, nobody's getting unless Taylor Swift sending her jet.
Yeah. I mean, how are you getting those kids to campus?
That's wild. I wonder what that is compared to, let's say, in Alabama, or in Georgia. I bet
let's look at this. Look at the University of Houston. The 3 recruiting classes that Tom Herman brought into Houston when he was there, average miles away from campus, 32.
Wow.
Their entire coaching staff never had to get on an airplane to recruit. Not one time.
Wow. Well, Houston's a country in itself when you look at it. It's not just football. It's great basketball recruiting. The baseball recruiting is elite.
That's why those Big 12 coaches don't want them in the league.
That's exactly right. Shoot, look at UCF, too, and where they're at down there getting into that's a totally different story. But, Luz, I want to talk about a couple of these Thursday night games. I am so jacked, tan, and emotional about the Thursday slate.
In that order?
In that order.
I love it.
Jacked, then tan,
then emotional.
That's exactly right. Let's start out with Purdue and Penn State. I love Purdue in this game. I love what Jeff Brom's been able to do. I think he's the new day Bobby Petrino minus the motorcycle. And you look at Aiden O'Connell, what they return. I know that, no David Bell, no Rondell Moore, but it seems like Purdue always finds a way, and a couple guys always step up to become the guy. They've got a ton of momentum, and if you look at that schedule, they win this one, it could get really, really, really interesting for Purdue late in the season with the record they could have.
It's interesting that we're talking about Purdue right now. I happen to have both times they beat the number 2 team in the country a year ago. I had them on the road at Iowa when I was number 2, had them at home when Michigan State was number 2.
Wow.
And a couple of things stood out in both of those games. They were able to get away with it because they were so explosive in the passing game, and David Bell was such a difference maker.
Yeah.
But they did settle in on a quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, which prior to that, in the first 4 to 5 weeks of the season, they hadn't settled in there yet. I have two chief concerns. Number one, they can't run the football. I mean, that was a very poor running football team, and the offensive line struggled to get pushed. They weren't dynamic in the backfield, so they were a little bit one-dimensional. And then how do you replace the George Karlaftis? Because that guy, he ain't just standing on street corners, man. He was a difference maker on a defense that was a really sound, solid defense, and I think they'll be good once again. But if they can come up with some more balance on offense, come up with something to offset pass rush, something to help protect Aiden O'Connell, because everybody in the stadium, including the hot dog vendor, knows that they're going to be throwing it all over the field. And then defensively, can you manufacture a new way of creating pass rush with the loss of Karlaftis?
Yeah, and again, we always talk about trying to create some type of balance. Nobody's ever 50-50. If you are,
no.
It's like a couple that says they never argue. Number one, I don't believe you, and if you don't, something's very wrong. But to me, I think you're going to see a lot of, they'll test it early. You'll see Purdue come out and see if they can get a little bit of push up front. If it doesn't work, though, I think Brom does such a good job of his modified runs, the way he's able to utilize the back out of the backfield in the passing game and try and replace a little bit of that run game and negate the pass rush up front if they're struggling to protect by spitting the ball out and getting playmakers in space. So that's one thing to keep an eye on as well. I do want to ask you, speaking of Penn State, Sean Clifford, I know Noah Cain's gone, transferred to LSU. They've lost some weapons. But you talk about an offensive line that wasn't very impressive or wasn't getting a lot of push.
Right.
There's a lot of questions on that Penn State offensive line. And if Purdue is able to force their will on them, especially on third down and medium, third down and long, Sean Clifford, without Jahan Dotson, he'll throw the ball up for grabs. We've seen it before.
Yeah, we have. And, it's interesting because you go back to that game at Iowa that they were clearly in control of. And had Sean Clifford not gotten hurt, Penn State might have gone on a run. I'm convinced they win that game. They just became inept at quarterback after that injury happened. So, number one, Sean Clifford's got to stay upright. He's got to stay healthy. It does have, obviously, a connection to the offensive line. I'm going to be very interested to see. There's a true freshman that's going to be emerging for that offense named Nick Singleton.
Yep.
He's a running back. He's a difference maker. And I know that's actually a position of strength for them overall in terms of depth. But if they can get some run game going a little bit, and maybe that, similar to what we were talking about with Purdue, can maybe offset some of the issues in the offensive line, at least slow down some pass rush and keep Purdue honest on defense. I got to be honest with you, and I happen to have Purdue Penn State week 2 at home when they taken on Ohio, so I'll be paying close attention to this game Thursday night. I don't know what to expect from them. I mean, they've been so Jekyll and Hyde, and I know they have better players than what their record reflects, which is so interesting to me that we saw James Franklin get the offseason uptick in contract considering their performance on the field. So I think we're looking at a Penn State team that could go anywhere from 500 to 10 wins, and I have no idea where it's going to fall in between.
Yeah, that's why I'm excited to see it.
Well, let's stay in the Big Ten. I was telling my colleagues here, Michigan is so good, they have not one starting quarterback, but 2. In your infinite wisdom, Tom, will you please explain to me why Jim Harbaugh is naming a starting quarterback for week 2 before we suit it up in week 1?
It's biblical, Cone.
It's biblical.
Well, it is biblical. Let me peel back the layers a little bit more, because if what he's saying, and if I'm reading between the lines or understanding him correctly, what he's saying is that he wants each quarterback to have a full slate of plays, series, quarters to essentially iron out the position on their own. But if you're truly wanting to do that, are we saying that Cade McNamara is going to play every snap in the opener? He's going to get all 4 quarters, and we're not going to have the quarterback carousel. And then the second week, are we seeing Cade McNamara will not play, and J.J. McCarthy gets all 4 quarters? Or are we starting, and then we're still going to rotate within the game like we have been? Because if you're going to do that, you're not solving any problem. You're not coming up with the answer to the equation. So I'm interested to see what they do in game, to then decide. there's a part of me that kind of gets it. Okay, we're going to give Cade this entire game. Let's see what he does. We're going to give JJ this entire game. Let's see what he does. No screwing around, no rotating. Then we're going to go back to the drawing table. We're going to say, this guy performed the best. He's going to start week 3. But I don't see them doing that. I still think they're going to play both guys in both games.
Yeah, what we were talking about is no two guys are 100% identical. You've gone through a spring practice. You've gone through an entire fall camp. No two guys are 100% identical. You have every single rep they've thrown in fall camp on tape. Start the better guy. And if for some reason they are, then you make a decision. You either start the guy with more experience who just got named team captain or start the guy with more eligibility and more upside. And there's precedent for this because Jim Harbaugh had to do this with Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, well, Tom, we know who Cade McNamara is. Like, what?
Right.
Some people are like, oh, well, it's a battle. We don't know the guy. We know who Cade McNamara is.
His ceiling is right here. His head's right here.
That's exactly right. Like, we know who Cade is. But you know what? It was good enough to save your ass.
Yes.
If you want to be honest. I mean, so to me, it looks, and we can look and break it down and go play by play. It looks to me like Harbaugh is trying to appease both guys. And that never works. It never works, and I just,
transfer portal.
Your transfer
there
portal,
it is.
and what happens in that locker room, all of a sudden, if Cade McNamara, who you just named team captain, goes and throws for 4 bills, 4 touchdowns, runs the offense smoothly, then J.J. McCarthy goes out there and has a good game against Hawaii, not as efficient, but makes a couple wow plays. Now you start dividing the locker room into, well, this guy should play, or this guy should. You're playing with fire, man. I said it Monday. You're playing with fire.
I agree, and I'll tell you this. I'm curious to know if he would have made this move if their first 3 games were different opponents.
No chance, Tom. Yeah. No chance.
I agree.
Who you starting if you play Ohio?
That's exactly right.
Start that guy. Go ahead, Blaine.
Right, exactly.
All right, I'm going to go to the Booster Club here. Real quick question, Tom. Is Batman a superhero?
Yeah, he's a superhero, but he's not a genetically enhanced superhero.
Okay.
So no powers. His superpower is wealth.
Yeah, he's rich and nuts.
Yeah, I
didn't know that was up for debate.
Yeah, he's rich and he's nuts and he's brave and he's courageous.
That's exactly right, which is harder to do.
But he's not. I mean, he's not this guy.
Yeah, for sure. Is that Cam Newton?
Looks just alike.
Right, he wishes.
All right, Kyle Kennedy wants to know what would be better for college football. Oregon, BYU, both undefeated in their Week 3 matchup. Or Bama, Tennessee, both undefeated in their Week 7
That's
matchup.
a good question, Kyle.
Oh, Bama, Tennessee. Are you kidding me? Nobody cares if BYU is undefeated in Week 3.
Whoa.
I mean,
wow.
I like BYU. I've called a ton of their games last couple of years. But is anybody really that invested in whether or not Oregon and BYU are undefeated in Week 3? I think a lot of people are invested in that Alabama-Tennessee matchup.
That would be huge. And it's at Tennessee. You talk about the Vol Navy, it looked like an armada around there. You would think we're getting invaded by the Netherlands.
It'll be a regatta.
No, the Argata.
All right, Travis Elrod, hashtag Ask Tom. Can Houston be a conference champion contender in its first year in the Big 12?
Potentially, yeah. I actually have them right now going undefeated. I think that they're going to be an undefeated ball club. They're going to be this year's Cincinnati. They're going to avenge the Texas Tech loss. I'm a little concerned about the UTSA game because I think Jeff Traylor's done a remarkable job there, and they're growing as a program. But they don't play Cincinnati or UCF in the conference. So if they kind of ride off into the sunset on a high, we already kind of touched on the advantages they're going to have in recruiting with the wealth of talent that's right outside of their campus. I don't think there's any question. They're the team that is built for the long haul of Power 5 football. They've already got the enhanced indoor facility. They've got a stadium that's less than 5 years old that they can always add to as well. So they've invested to get to this point, and then they've got the player pool to pull it off.
Yep.
Yeah, Houston's dangerous, man. They're dangerous. There's a couple programs that are just sitting on the hill. I'll tell you another one with where they're at, Coastal Carolina. Remember I said that. You're right by the beach. It's an unbelievable place. There's talent all around you. That's one reason why Jamie may not leave. They're scary over the next 7 to 10 years in general.
I agree.
All right, Dylan.
Hey, by the way, which one of you guys was going all JJ or JT Daniels on us?
This guy right here.
What is JT Daniels
This man,
done?
hold on. This man hates on Kirk Cousins.
He's
but just
won and got hurt. I mean, he tore his ACL.
Nah.
Yeah, he won a few games. Like this one guy wasn't 12-3.
I mean, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good in those games that he tore his ACL. I mean, what do you expect? What are you expecting from JT Daniels?
Something is wrong. There's something missing. Why can't he get on the field? There is something missing there, and it ain't a physical attribute. There's something not right.
I'm with you, man.
But are we questioning his talent on the field? That's why. I mean, you go back. I mean, they were rolling kids at Georgia just as Stetson Bennett was. I mean, he was throwing for kids. They were beating kids by 40.
But why wasn't JT able to do the same thing with that caliber of player around him when the walk-on was?
Well, are we questioning JT's leadership? Is that what it is? Is there something wrong with him mentally? I haven't heard
I'm wondering
anything.
I'm wondering if it is. Is he slow to process? Is he not an ideal decision maker? Is it pre-snap diagnosis? What is it? We've all seen him throw the football. He can throw the football, but something's not right.
Tom, I'm in that camp too. It's again, and injuries happen. I get it. There's been people that are great players that got Booby Miles. Like I've seen it before. But when you look at JT and when we talked to him, I'll never forget this, David. When we were at SEC Media Days 2 years ago, and we talked to him, the minute we got done talking to him, you looked at me and you were like, I do not believe in this guy. I'll never forget you said that. And I've
heard a lot of people say that, by the way.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people come away from conversations either with him or about him that have the exact same sentiment.
Well, look, a lot of those California guys are just different, and then some of them go out and win the Heisman Trophy, right? Bryce Young's one of them. I know that they have a different mentality about him, but we haven't seen it on the field to back it up. What do you think the ceiling is right here at West Virginia or for a possible professional career for him, Tom?
I don't know how good they are around him, guys. I think that's my biggest concern is Graham Harrell coming in to save the day? I know that's a bit of a reunion there, so there's familiarity. Are they going to run the football? Because
offensive line's bad.
And at least Neil Brown was a broken branch off the air raid in the sense that he wanted to run the football. Graham Harrell doesn't want to run the football. Have you watched USC the last couple of years?
Yeah.
I mean, horrendous in the run game and poor in the offensive line. So I just don't know how well that's going to go for them. Defensively, I had them 2 years ago during the COVID year, and I really liked some of their young players. But I think they've got a long way to go. And listen, Pitt is they're bringing some dudes now on defense.
Sure.
Now I'll say this, guys, and maybe I'm the Debbie Downer on the quarterback position today, but I'm not as sold on Keaton Slovis either. I mean, he's been good at times, streaky at others, and often injured.
Yeah.
And I think those three, and he was playing in such a simplified quarterback-friendly offense, which is going to be vastly different than what he's going to be asked to do in Pitt's offense. So I'm kind of sitting back and taking my time and hedging my bets a little bit on him. I think they're going to be good in a lot of areas, but I want to be convinced at quarterback too.
Yeah. Well, Tom, you're good in a lot of areas. That's why we're bringing you on weekly, my friend. What's the first game you're going to call this year?
I got Clemson, Georgia Tech on Monday night.
Yeah.
Labor Day, prime time.
Is that the Chick-fil-A game?
Is it in the ATL?
It's the Chick-fil-A kickoff weekend. Yeah, got
Chick-fil-A
Oregon
kickoff
and,
weekend.
Georgia. Yep. And then us on Monday night from Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, Jeff Collins is a good friend of ours. We went there last year in the facility. Man, I hope they can turn it around. I know they're going to be Clemson, but Jeff Sims, come on. Let's go. Let's figure it out.
He's got talent, man.
He does.
Put it together.
Well, Tom, he had to overhaul that roster. I'll never forget when we were talking to him before the year last year. He was like, when I took this job, there were 12 running backs on scholarship.
Yeah.
12. Yeah. People don't understand, like flipping a roster, it ain't easy.
And it couldn't have come at a worse time because for 18 months, you could not go on the road and recruit, and a player could not come on your campus. So he had to do that or attempt to do it in the smack dab middle of a pandemic when you've had an offensive system in place for 11 years, right? So listen, have things been ideal? No. Have they gone the way that they wanted to? No. Has it gone as fast as probably people were expecting? No. But I'll say this about the administration. Give them a break on the schedule, will you?
Oh, my God.
You're playing Ole Miss, Georgia, and UCF? Come on. Give them a chance.
Yeah, it's brutal. Whoever's doing the scheduling for Georgia Tech and Arkansas need to take a long walk off a short pier. But, Tom, real quick, One upset you like this weekend? Is there one game you got your eye on? You kind of got circled. You're doing the Doctor Strange on, two hands on the temple, two other fingers making a circle.
Yeah. To be honest with you, the Thursday night matchup, the Penn State Purdue matchup.
Yes. It's another one.
Yeah.
Added to the list.
I feel much better now
got
about
my
it.
eye on it. I got my eye on it. Yeah. And by the way, don't be surprised if Florida State plays their tail off Sunday night.
Ooh,
Look,
I was going to ask him about that one.
I was going to say, LSU
Go ahead,
let me
spill the
down.
beans
You
now,
don't want to
Tom.
hear that.
Listen.
Oh, no.
Now think about this. Just rewind to 2019 when that game was scheduled, right? You've got LSU coming off maybe the greatest college football team, arguably of all time, maybe one of them, all right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got Florida State literally a train wreck in every way, shape, and form. Fast forward to now, and if that thing would have gotten a line from the 2019 year, it would have been LSU probably by 24. I think it's LSU 3. Is it 3 right now?
Yeah.
Or it was
It's 3
somewhere
last time I
around
saw it.
there.
Yep.
And now you look at where LSU's come to, and you look at how all of a sudden Florida State's starting to improve. They actually look like an organized unit. I don't know. I think that one's going to be intriguing on Sunday.
Yeah, if it was anywhere other than the Superdome, I think it'd be really weird. I get kind of gun shy because I was high on LSU going to play UCLA last year before Zach Charbonnet pulled their pants down in front of the whole high school. But that's going to be an interesting game. Tom, we appreciate it as well, my friend, as always. Excited to see you next Wednesday, and let's get this thing kicked off.
You got it, guys. Thanks. Have a great weekend. Enjoy college football.
You too, brother.
Thanks,
Everybody
man.
go follow Tom on social.
If you like that content, go ahead and subscribe because we're going to be balling every day on Crain and Company. Hit that like button while you're at it and go ahead and smash it like Derrick Henry on an ISO run.